Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Suit Remote. Going back into TIFF 2021, covering days 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, I don't know. But we've got some movies to talk about, some good movies. Definitely the last video, but not the least, because we've got 6 or 7 really incredible films for the most part to talk about here. Um, some good performances as well that may be contenders in award season. Some sleepers here as well from some first time directors. And I'm joined with Aaron, the Nerd Suit Monkey. How are you doing, Aaron?
Doing good, can't complain. Back home now. Have you watched any movies since you've been home?
I watched Malignant,
Well, like I
which
mean,
was
we've watched. Yeah, I mean, I've
you mean
watched like the
non-TIFF movies?
TIFF screeners. Yeah, I feel like I needed
Yeah,
to take a
only
break. I've been
I needed
watching a
to take
lot
a
of.
break from like 3 a day,
Yeah,
definitely.
I've been
But
going back to TV.
I was so excited to watch Malignant because of all the talk surrounding it, how divisive
Yeah, I
it's
still need
been.
to watch that. I was gonna do my Matrix. Like, it was a little premature, I think. So I'm glad I didn't. But I was gonna start with
Already getting
Matrix.
into the Matrix?
Yeah, last night I got like 5 minutes in. I'm like, yo, I cannot do this right now. And I turned
No.
on Squid Game, which I'm very much enjoying. So I think it all worked out.
Yeah, the Matrix, you got to save that for November. That'll be a fun
Cool.
watch.
Yeah, I got that and Spider Man. I might just do that all at once. Just get ready for the big December releases. But yeah, I'm excited to talk. I think we both. I didn't really talk to you much about this one, but the first one we're going to talk about, like, that's the one Matt Neglia from Next Best Picture told us to look out for, and that's Flea, and that's my number one. I don't know if it is for you.
It was I think it was my number 3 and number 4, but it definitely
Ah,
didn't disappoint.
yeah. So that was surprising. That's what I was like looking forward to going into all this. Just like, even though that one was like highly recommended, going into it, I'm like, oh, Dune, I'll probably be my favorite or shit like that. But there was so many good surprises, and Flea, even Flea with number one, and even Drive My Car number two. Like, that's, I don't know. I was very surprised by some of these films, and yeah, but Flea blew me away. Talk about
Yeah, I've
just
actually
a
got it number 3 for TIFF.
oh wow.
And number 4 on the year, because the only film that's on my top 5 right now that's not from TIFF is still the Demon Slayer movie, which was incredible and it belongs in that top 5. But yeah, Flea, I mean, a movie that very timely for unfortunate reasons. It is kind of very sad and harrowing how history repeats itself. So when you're watching this movie, you're watching this journey, you're thinking about all the thousands of people that went through it and who are now going through it for the first time. But it's definitely a movie that blew me away from a technical standpoint, the way that it was made, the way that it used animation to tell this story, to imbue some beauty into a story that is so heartbreaking at times.
And yeah, like the animation aspect was really interesting. Being able to, visualize a lot of these events and kind of, it's much more. I prefer the animation to the dramatizations. You see in some documentaries. So I very much enjoyed the
Right.
animation style, the different styles, the shadow, like when it's a distant memory or something that maybe he wasn't present for, and the way they changed that up to kind of change what the story was. Like you said, just a grueling story just to hear about like the perseverance of this man and his family uh just to survive. And there was a lot of moments like that, but also a lot of like, I don't know if optimism is the right word, but like inspiring, like, because that's just what it was. It's like an aspiring, and yeah, and I think a lot of the characters, him looking back on the perseverance and kind of having that optimism or that that feeling that we can do this and get through. Like, it was truly just a roller coaster, emotional wise, while watching. But yeah, I think it was probably it's my number one from TIFF. It's just it was a very unique experience, and I got to tell you, I don't know if that's his name. Amin, because I know they said they changed some of the names to protect some people, so I don't know if they changed his name, but you get this a lot where the documentary style of somebody telling their story and like almost an interview, but he was just like a natural. The way he told his story was he just told it so well, and that's a hard thing to do. Even though it is your story and your experiences, not a lot of people naturally are great storytellers when it comes to just talking and through interviews. And the way he was able to explain and go through the events of his life, I thought was very well done. And give credit to the interviewer too for I guess they worked together to kind of, him leading with the questions and him being able to answer in such a detailed and gripping way. I think a
Yeah,
lot
it
of that
was
in some documentaries.
yeah, and I wonder if animation is the better alternative for that. But his storytelling abilities to keep things very simple and concise and emotional, it really lended to the way the story was actually brought to life by the director, who was a childhood friend of his, Jonas Rasmussen, who wanted to tell this story because he had known him since high school. And an interesting aspect is how what he's giving us through recalling his life, these are the secrets that ensured his safety for a long time. These are secrets that he had to keep in order to protect himself and to protect his family. So you saw that at times he would get emotional, and obviously he talks about the violence and trying to flee the country, and you're thinking, oh, this is hard for him to relive because of how tragic it was. And it was tragic, but there are twists in his story. Things, like I mentioned, that he had to keep bottled up. And now he's letting it all out with someone who he's obviously comfortable with. And also getting into what he's doing now in his personal life, the relationship that he was sharing with his fiancee, how they were both looking for a house, trying to take those next steps, and how the past can have such a strong impact, especially a past as heavy as that, on your present. So all those
True.
aspects, the way that it came together in this small little gripping movie documentary that should be considered for one of the best movies of the year. I think it should be right up there when it comes to Best Picture at the Oscars. It was
Right, best
just
picture,
brilliant.
documentary. You can go for an animation. Like it could really,
Yeah,
you can make a case for a lot of different categories. Um, Foreign film as well, foreign language film. So, um, I mean, you would assume it gets at least one of those, if not multiple.
I definitely think so. What
And you
also
could
caught
tell,
my
like,
eyes that Riz Ahmed and Nicolaj
yeah,
Coster-Waldau do the voice for, I guess, the English version. I'd be interested to check that out, because, like you mentioned, the way he tells the story, it really lends itself to being a movie.
right. It could have played out like a movie too, like if they ever wanted to revisit this story in that format. But and yeah, you talked about the relationship between the director, interviewer, and Amin, but like I feel like that was such a benefit to this story because you did see his hesitancy, even with a friend, to really open up, and it took a lot of time. Times where he had to stop and they had to wait months to even go back to it. So I think it was kind of just that perfect relationship and something that was comfortable that really helped really push this documentary forward. And maybe if it's just somebody else he doesn't know, you wouldn't get all of that information, or uh, someone who isn't his friend wouldn't have been as patient with getting some aspects of the story. So I think it was just like a perfect blend of all that. That really, I don't know, you can really tell the way he talks about it, and what we hear is like very sincere and genuine. And I don't know, it really just radiates off the screen. So this was definitely one I was looking forward to because of Matt's recommendation. That definitely exceeded expectations.
Yeah, and it's not a movie's job to educate people, but I think this is a movie a lot of people need to see just to get a better perspective of the world you're living in. When we look at refugees, modern refugees, often people will say, why don't they come here legally? Or it's not our responsibility to protect them. Get some more perspective as to why people are fleeing their country, why they're leaving their homes. This is a family that didn't want to leave. They were forced to leave.
Yeah,
They
they
had to
wanted to
just
stay.
abrupt in the middle of the day, leave
Yeah.
everything behind, all the photos, the memories, the house you grew up in. And I have a friend whose family escaped from Afghanistan during this time, during the mid 80s. And he told the story just like he did. It was a moment's notice that you left, and you were minutes away from either being killed or taken as a prisoner, which would ultimately result in you probably losing your life. So it just gives people more of a perspective, when you hear some of these asinine takes on refugees and immigrants, just broaden your horizons here a bit. And I think this would be like I said, it's not the film's responsibility to do that. It's the individual's responsibility. But this is a good step that everyone should take.
Definitely, right. That situation, and like with so many others where it's like this was just a decision they had to make, life or death, right? It's
Yeah.
it's just like it's just survival. And yeah,
And you see
like you
how
said,
happy they were in their home.
yeah,
There was no reason for them to leave besides all the political chaos. So it's a hard watch. It's definitely a heavy watch, but it's worth it.
Definitely.
All right, let's move on to
Um,
the next movie here. We have I have Benediction on my list. You want to hop into Benediction?
Benediction.
This was one that you enjoyed.
Yeah, I did. We could talk about Benediction. I'm considering it part of Benedict Cumberbatch's TIFF solely because of the name.
I really
I feel like
wanted
it's
him to
just
be in this.
I thought he like I knew he wasn't, but I thought he was just because the name Benediction, Benedict, like it just in my mind he was in this along with Power and the
It's a
Dog.
movie about all his fanboys and fangirls, all the Cumber bitches, and how he deals with them.
Yeah, I got a benediction from more Cumberbatch. Um, yeah, let's talk about Benediction though. I This is a movie that like I remember you came into the hotel while I was watching this. You're like, "Oh, how is it?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm really enjoying it. It's super British."
As
And
British
you're
as
like,
it
"Yeah,"
gets.
and you're like, "I've been in here for 5 seconds, and yeah, I can already tell that it's probably the most British movie." Um,
Well, I wasn't
yeah,
excited for it because of what I heard. Just walking around the hotel room doing some stuff, I was like, "Oh God, this is gonna be insufferable, huh?" And it turned out
it
not to
just
be.
yeah, like the part you came into, like they were just using a bunch of big words and talking
I
super
know, yeah.
fancy, and like
It's like an
there
axe
wasn't.
throwing competition with giant words, just throwing around syllables like knives.
But yeah, like this movie, like it definitely gets like I don't know, I don't want to say like old at times, but like I think it's definitely you have to be into it to really like get the most out of it. But it is another super like there's been a lot of like pretty sad movies, and I think at the end of it, like the end shot of this movie like really stuck with me for a while after I watched it. Um, just
Yeah.
it really was just an interesting like trip through this person's life. It jumps around a little, and it sometimes that gets a little confusing. You don't really know where you are, or it's not as clear cut. But once you kind of realize the setting you're in and where you are, and you kind of um, figure all that out, you get right back into it. And it was just a very interesting journey of this man during this time around what after the First World War, World War II era of him just trying to be uh, a struggling poet in this society, being a gay man in this society, and just seeing the trials and tribulations that come along with that, and with his relationships and family life. I thought it was just a very good look into this person's life.
Right, and his life being full of so many different characters who are famous intellectuals, writers, artists, directors, watching the entanglements of all their lives was a blast. But then you start to put it together. Not that you put it together, but you realize that there's this wall between them, even though they are so intimate with each other and they know so much about each other. But being openly gay at this time, like we know, was something that was hard on them. They didn't escape the persecution just because of who they were, even though they were allowed to have these relationships and they were open with their families and friends. At the end of the day, there were certain decisions that they had to make as men in this society. And you see the way that,
Right,
Jack Lowden plays the younger Siegfried Sassoon and Peter Capaldi plays the older version. And you see how, bitter and regretful that he grew. And it's because
right.
of the limitations that society put on him as a gay man.
That was like the real like that part like hit like the most for me. It's just seeing because they go back and forth from the older version to the younger version, and just seeing like yeah, I guess a lot of the regret, the resentments, you know, and where he is now with his family life. It was just I don't know. It really like it was a bit depressing, especially watching him as his younger self, as Jack Lowden. More of, I mean, Jack Lowden playing the younger character, um, had that confidence and charisma and who he was within his circle, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot of times, this movie you didn't really see the outside of how. Um, it wasn't really like it doesn't really focus on like the outside and maybe like the hate and all that would be surrounding that gay men at that time. It was more of that inner circle, right? So you didn't they showed you more of the perspective of the inner circle and what it was like and how they interacted with each other and some of the things they had to deal with during that time. And within those circles, you just saw a different person at times. And they definitely had their own drama within that. The Ivor character is I fucking hate that guy. So one of the worst
Yeah,
characters. Not like that
played
he's a
by
bad
Jeremy
character.
Irvine.
He's played wonderfully, but
Yeah.
he's just a relentless douchebag. But Jack London's performance, I thought was like he really stole the show for me. I think I described him to you, like he kind of reminded me like a little bit of the fuck's his name? I've been doing
Tom
this a
Hiddleston.
lot lately. Yeah, that's where I just can't remember names. Yeah, Tom Hiddleston and what like and kind of his charm and charisma on screen, and he kind of looked like Simon Pegg, so I said he's like a little mix of that. But
He does look like
uh,
Simon Pegg. They should have got him to
so
play the older version.
so it was like a Simon Pegg and Tom Hiddleston mix, which goddamn, that's pretty impressive. But yeah, I thought like he was great in this role, and just that on-screen presence was pretty phenomenal, and I think carried a lot of this movie for me.
The dialogue does get very close to overwhelming for me, but you realize they're intellectuals. This is how they probably talked to some extent. But yeah, him playing Siegfried Sassoon, who was, famous poet, the way that he was able to deliver some of these monologues that were so well written from a dialogue standpoint and just for the characters in the actual moments. He's so witty, so charming, so charismatic, so slick with his words. He could cut anybody with the way he speaks. So, and even Peter Capaldi, like you mentioned, the transformation of that character, he's playing a different version of that character where he's a bit more mean and brutal to the people around him. He's not as witty and cheeky anymore. The wit is still there, but it's a bit more harsh now because of what he went through. But yeah, all the performances across the board, he definitely was a standout, without a doubt. And it was cool to see him have those brief moments with Wilfred Owen, who was another famous World War I poet. The way that they intertwined the poetry with the movie, the juxtaposition of the modern day and then the images of the war narrated by Jack Lowden reciting the poetry, that was very powerful. That really hits you. And
Yes.
that's another aspect of the movie that we haven't even talked about, him being a dissenter in World War One, calling out his superiors in the military, saying that they were just dragging out this war for no reason, and that he was brave enough to stand up for what he believed in.
See, that was one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I thought like I didn't really know much about it going in, and I thought that was going to be the main, um, that was going to be like the main narrative set around that, him not wanting to fight in the war, and rather than a look throughout his whole life, and that was just a glimpse into one part of his life. But I really did enjoy those aspects, especially when he gets sent to the like a facility. I guess it was like a mental
Yeah.
facility for soldiers, but not really because that was just like out of like respect, I guess. Like, oh, you're a good
Yeah,
soldier.
it's
We don't want.
basically, we're not going to kill you.
Yeah.
We'll just send you to
Um,
our nut house.
but there was like the relationship. I forget the character's name that he had with one of the other soldiers in that facility, and even one of like the. I don't even think they were like had therapists back then, but the therapy equivalent to what that was. I thought those were some of
Yeah, I
the
think
best
he
scenes
was
in the
like a
film for me.
therapist or a psychiatrist.
Yeah, but I don't think in World War One they had that. Like, he didn't go to therapy in the military. It's probably just two guys chatting it up.
No, it was his therapy
Yes,
in a way. Who knows if that character even exists?
but yeah, those are some of my favorite parts of the movie. And then, yeah, but then obviously you get the larger scope of his life following those events. But yeah, it is like it was
It's a
pretty
movie
funny at
that's
times too, like in a
yeah,
very
no, it's very funny.
British uppity way. And
You
sometimes I
had to
like
make
that.
sure that you were really paying attention to get the jokes. Then you let out a nice belly laugh. Ha 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 ha.
I
Oh,
pret- like
Siegfried.
I knew like they were trying to make a joke there. Even if I didn't get it, I would laugh. Even though I was the only one watching,
I was
just like
giving
on
them
my
pity
own.
laughs,
Yeah. No, it
like
wasn't
when you
pity
laughed at
laughs.
the
I was
teacher.
like, oh no, I know. Yeah, I got that one. I'm smart enough.
Right.
I'm high
Ha ha
class.
ha, just looking around. It's a movie that's really sat well with me. I actually raised it a star on my score and ended up giving it 4 stars. I don't know
Oh
if it's
wow.
gonna crack my top 10 for the year, but it's definitely a movie I enjoyed more the more that I thought about it, the more I liked it.
I think it's 11 for me.
11 out of 10? The hell?
No, 11 ranked out of the 22, 20, whatever I've seen at TIFF.
Okay, not bad.
Only a couple I had like under 3 stars. So
Yeah, there weren't that many stinkers. This next one definitely wasn't a stinker. It wasn't the best movie that I saw at TIFF. Middle of the pack type, maybe more towards the bottom. The Electrical Life of Louis Wain. This was the second Benedict Cumberbatch production that played at TIFF. It actually premiered at Telluride. And this was a role that was perfect for Benedict Cumberbatch. He's played these weird, quirky geniuses his entire career. I think that's why I was so impressed with him with The Power of the Dog, because it was a character that strayed away from that, and then he got right back into it with Louis Wain. The character of Louis Wain, if you love cats, you're gonna just enjoy this movie and love this guy for what he did for pet owners. I mean, that's the prevailing theory, is that his drawings and illustrations of cats, the realistic ones and the more abstract and funny drawings, is what made cats acceptable in society. So that was fun. It was just fun to learn this history, to learn about the life of this man. And at times it's definitely a sad movie, but the tone that they struck was very lighthearted and fun. It was definitely a celebration of this man's life, even though there were some hardships for him and his family.
Right, and I think I did enjoy this movie for the most part. It is kind of wacky, and I kind of was like on board with like the style in the beginning, but I feel like that kind of got old for me pretty fast. And I think after about the halfway mark, something pretty big happens, and then I feel like that should have just been the natural end, but it kind of dragged on a little bit after that, and I just really just kind of lost interest towards the end. But it was still like, I mean, like you said, Benedict Cumberbatch in this type of role, it's just what he's been like. It's what he does very well, and what he's kind of been known for. Whether it be, I guess, most notably like that Sherlock type character, a lot of an eccentric performance, and I think him and Claire Foy really bounce off each other pretty well. And I think a lot of the supporting
She's
characters,
awesome.
yeah,
I
she is
fucking
really
love
good.
Claire Foy, man.
They should have just stuck with the crown, like in those era, like young Elizabeth. You
She
really
can
don't
really
need to
play
go.
any role, man. She could play the Queen of England. She could play a quirky teacher. She could play a person that's been locked in an insane asylum. She's just good at everything. She's good at everything. And like you mentioned, the
Um,
chemistry between her and Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, not
yeah,
to get
really
into
all the
any
supporting.
spoilers, but the way that
Yeah,
their relationship impacted his work, I thought was very touching. By the end of the movie, like you said, it definitely does drag on, and it doesn't hold your attention for the entire runtime. But by the end, you felt such, I guess, gratitude for knowing who this character was.
right. And the way he interacts with all supporting characters, his sisters, his boss, and things like that. It's not really a spoiler because it happens early in the movie, and it's just like a little bit. But the scene when he's in the pool with Toby Jones, was fucking hilarious.
So funny, dude. Toby
I
Jones
got
is another all-star who just brings it in everything he's in, but that was so good.
I got a
I
good
feel like
laugh
that's
out
how
of me.
Teddy swims.
Yeah.
Beating the water,
Um,
punching the strokes.
and it was like a nice little look into that time period, especially in terms of like, him getting involved as a teacher, which like now you're like, oh, that's just a normal thing people do. Like teachers are just like, but back then
Right.
it was like, how could you fraternize with someone that lowbrow and ruin the family and things like that? So trying to weave through that kind of the restrictions or kind of the views of that time where it was pretty interesting. But yeah, it's one that like I probably wouldn't watch again when it comes out, but if it's ever on, maybe I'll like watch like 20 minutes of it. A lot of people could connect to it and like it, but for me, it's just a little too much at times.
It's not an awards contender. It's not a classic by any means. It's not Benedict Cumberbatch at his best, but it's definitely a movie that if you're a film fan, you're going to enjoy it. I think you'll get something out of
Worth
it.
to watch, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this next movie is definitely one that's worth a watch. This ended up being one of my favorite movies of the year. Another surprise. I didn't really know much about it going into it, but Seven Prisoners, directed by Alexandro Morato, who is known for his debut film Socrates, which was also very acclaimed. But this movie, I mean, I haven't seen Socrates, but I don't know if it will hit me as hard as this did. Because 10 minutes in, I wanted to turn it off because I knew where it was headed. But you can't look away. You can't look away from what these characters are going through. What did you think about this one, Aaron? Seven Prisoners.
Oh, it was fantastic. It's number 4 for me. Like you said, it's such a tough movie to get through, but the way it, man, just like this, I'm trying to like weave through spoilers, but no, I think it's, yeah, you could say the
I
overall
think
case.
you can get into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like these people trying to find a better like it's basically they prey on people who are living in poverty to give them a job, but basically it's slave labor and they lock them up and they just work them as much as they want without getting paid. And I think that like obviously with and they get into a lot of the things with like human trafficking and sweatshops and all that. And it is like a big issue that's going on in the real world today. And that's tough because like when you watch a movie in the that takes place 60 years ago, you can always be like, well, at least we're better off. Like this is something that's happening right now, like all over the world, and just seeing what these people had to go through, and even just like the people like in charge, like they gave great characterization to the people who put these people in this predicament, and I don't think they redeem him by any means, but just getting the perspective, and even with some of the characters who kind of have to make a decision whether or not like to give up basically on their morality in order to get out of a life of poverty and suffering, and just that moral dilemma a lot of these characters go through, and seeing the way how it all plays out was very intriguing. Where um, a lot of character decisions you don't agree with, or are they and they're very much the wrong decisions. But from everything you've seen and the way they describe their lives and the depth they go into, and only a hour and a half film, which is incredible, like to get that much depth into these characters. And when they do make some of these questionable decisions, you like I said, you don't agree, but you can kind of see where they're coming from, and
Right.
just how they get sucked into this life. Very reminiscent of like a watching an old Scorsese gangster flick. Those are obviously more glorified at times, especially in the beginning with the lore, like the way they lure them into like this life of money, girls, and all that. And it's kind of cool. Like when you see Henry, you can see why he gets sucked into this. This one takes a little different approach to it because obviously this isn't as glorified as that, but you can kind of see why someone would get sucked into this. And it's a very cautionary tale. It highlights a real problem going on today, and I just thought it was beautifully told.
At the beginning, the naivete of the characters is heartbreaking. When they're starting to put it together, what their scenario, what the circumstance actually is, that's what made me want to turn it off. Because the more they realize that they were fooled into becoming basically contemporary slaves, that's what it is. You start to realize, I mean, the life just leaves their eyes gradually. But for the main character, it's this really dark and disturbing coming of age story almost. Mateus, played by Christian Malheiros, who also starred in the director's debut film Socrates. I mean, the moral decisions that this character has to make are no decisions anyone should ever have to make, let alone an 18-year-old who basically knows nothing of the world. I mean, he has limited knowledge and he dreams of getting out one day and he thinks this is his ticket to get out. But when he realizes where he is, um, like you said, he's forced to make a decision. Do I move up in this world or do I stay where I am? And they all realize that they're kind of cogs in this disgusting and abhorrent machine. Even the main character, not the main character, the boss, the dude who lures
Luca,
them all in. Luca, right,
yeah,
played by Rodrigo Santoro, best known probably to our audience as Hector Escanton on Westworld. All the bottled up past in that character, you could just see it through his performance. That even though he's very good at this job, it is taking away from a part of his humanity. It's corrupted him to a point where he's no longer the same person that he was. It's all around heartbreaking.
yeah. Like you said, just with both of these characters, just them coming to like you know justifying or forsaking maybe who they once were in order to find a path out of poverty, no matter what it takes and no matter who they hurt. It's it's sitting back and like in our perspective watching, it's like, oh, it's an easy decision to make, like just don't do that. But the way they tell these characters stories, it really does blend a line of how it makes sense for these characters to make some of the decisions they do, no matter how morally bad they are. And it just sheds a light on like under some parts of the world where things are so bad in a lot of these areas that someone would even consider, you know, working like this or doing this to other people in order to for them to get out of that life. And yeah, like I said, it is heartbreaking. And but I was shocked too. Like I don't know if like you noticed this, just only an hour and a half, but the way they were able to really tell this story so well in that amount of time, I thought was very impressive.
Oh
Especially
yeah,
for
definitely.
what was this? You said a second feature.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just very impressive.
You just feel the weight of every decision and every moment because everything it is so drastic for these characters to make the right decision. And mostly for the main character Mateus. Like I said, the juggling act that he has to perform here is horrifying. It's as scary as any movie I've watched this year because of the moral decisions that had to be made and the way that, our sense of morality living where we do is completely shattered by this movie. And even when you look up the numbers for contemporary slavery in the United States, you'd be shocked by how many people are contemporary slaves, even in America. I
Yeah.
think there was a report recently that there are more slaves now on Earth than at any point in the world. And you see the way that, the contemporary world is so much more complex. It's not as simple as saying, you're being subjugated, you're lesser than me. It's the way that people are fooled into it because of the desperation of their lives or because of how, well constructed these criminal organizations are, the infrastructure for it. They talk about how this basically fuels Sao Paulo. They're the ones doing the work to power this fucking city because of the jobs that they're doing. So, it's not by mistake that this is happening. There's a scene in the movie where he asks Luca, "How many are there?" and Luca can't even answer. But see, this going back to my
Ward
point
buzz around
a
it.
few videos ago when I said it's impossible for me to say one performance is better than the other. Rodrigo Santoro in here, that's an Oscar-worthy performance, man. Any given year, you're going to get like 10 to 15 performances that deserve gold statues. So it's
No,
so
dude,
hard
like
for
it's
me to.
like yeah, you're right. Like
It's a performance of a
especially with
lifetime by this actor.
especially with foreign language films that are just generally not going to get the same attention that Western films are.
Right.
Like it's just inevitable. Maybe it's always maybe a couple that kind of maybe there's some buzz around acting or directing or best picture, but it's never like you could watch, the top 20 films of the year worldwide, and half of those are, or even maybe even more than half, are going to be foreign language, but they're just not going to get the same recognition. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty much, I think it's getting better in terms of like accessibility and people being more willing to seek out foreign films. Even like now, like I just mentioned Squid Game earlier on, it's a South Korean show, and it's kind of blowing up right now. So
Yeah, it's
I think
everywhere.
so as time goes on, like I think the
Well,
general
that's
audience will be
Netflix, right?
more receptive. Yeah, Netflix.
Seven Prisoners
So
is Netflix as well. So you have to shout out Netflix. They're putting their money behind some really interesting and thought-provoking projects.
right, and yeah, as long I think as accessibility, and that's one of the benefits of streaming when we talk about cinemas versus streaming. Is that films like this are going to be more accessible and more people are going to watch it, and the more eyes are on something and the more buzz that it creates, the more likely they will get recognized in some of these awards. But
Yeah, I hope so. And
um,
being on Netflix, I think that will bode well for more people watching this movie. Hopefully, it builds some word of mouth because this is a
it's like
movie similar to Flea.
even
People have to see it, but they'll also enjoy it for what it is.
even just like look at my top 10 from TIFF. It's what let's see. What was Murina? Was that Portuguese?
Yes.
So a Portuguese film, two French films, Seven Prisoners is Brazilian,
Yes.
and Drive My Car Japanese, and Flee Swedish. So that's what, one, two, three, four, 6 out of 10 are foreign films. But
Yeah.
I probably would have seen maybe three of these if it wasn't for TIFF, if that, just by pure accessibility. So
Right. Hopefully, Drive My Car will let me get into one of their screeners coming up. Shout out, Drive My Car. But yeah, Seven Prisoners definitely a movie that we both enjoyed and a movie that we both recommend. I think the next film that we're going to talk about, Saloum, is similar to Seven Prisoners, a surprise. I think it's the directorial debut for Jean-Luc Herbelote. It's a story about three mercenaries in Senegal, and it's a revenge story. So the way that everything unfolded, I mean, I can't get enough of when you have badass characters who are well dressed, who are interesting, who are cool, and they're in a confined space with their enemies, with their other adversaries, and it's all about who's going to outwit the other one, who's going to come out on top. The tension
Right.
throughout this film was so palpable. You feel it in every scene and every moment because of the mystery, because of the relationships between these characters. You don't know who's on the same page and how much they really like each other until the movie really starts to get going. And then there was some genre bending at times as well. It was comedic. It was horrific. There were some things
Right.
that didn't really make sense. The way that the metaphors were brought to life and the themes were brought to life in a surrealist way was something that I absolutely adored. So this was a movie that I wished we would have been in Toronto to watch on the big screen, caught it on the digital. But I don't want to say it blew me away, but I was definitely impressed.
Yeah, I think a lot of those, a lot of what you liked about it, I liked as well. But that really only applied to the first half for me, because like the first half of this movie, like you said, cool, charismatic characters, spaghetti western type of vibe to it. Some of the way it was shot, like the vibe around it with the music, I was really into this. And like you said, the tension they're able to build while they go to this small little village and kind of interact with these characters, and the tension building was pretty great. And the second half of the movie, it just takes a turn. And I don't want to spoil what that turn is, but it becomes something completely different. And I think it's a lot of people are going to be split on that. I saw some people that really dug that, but for me, I think it really ruined the movie for me. Not ruined it, because I thought it was still pretty good, but I definitely lost a lot of my intrigue and um, a lot of my like. I just wasn't fully on board as I was for the first half of the movie.
I think that change, listen, I mean, the change is what the movie is. I think the way that
Right?
it
No.
started, if it had wrapped up in a similar way, where it was more about dialogue and characters outwitting each other, I would have preferred that. The change, to me, it doesn't ruin the movie for me, or like you said, it didn't ruin the movie for you. But it's not that I liked or that I preferred the change, but I liked what was happening on screen. It does get so far out there. It's similar to *Malignant*. You know, a lot of people have been making the same argument that the ending just threw them off completely. This one, it's not that it drew me in more, but it didn't lose my attention. I still enjoyed what was happening.
They kind of
But I
hint at
think I
it.
would have preferred a smarter ending, if that makes sense,
Yes.
rather than such a
So I think
insane
obviously
ending.
this was like what the movie was, right? They were trying to lead up to this point in the beginning, but the beginning was done so well, and I don't know, and they obviously like hint towards this kind of shift. Maybe if it was a little more subtle, I would have been on board with that type of twist, if you want to call it that. But for me, it was just suddenly it just became something else that I really wasn't as on board for. Like I said, it didn't ruin it for me. Ruin it for me because you still have a lot of the characters that you were on with this journey for about like an hour before this, so you still like invested in them and kind of see where how it all plays out. But um, yeah, I did, like obviously I can say like, oh, they should have just kept it into that like small contained village and have that battle of wits, but that's not what the movie was ultimately about. It was like leading up to this, so I
Right,
think it
maybe you
might
could
really.
have ended with the big moment at the dinner table. Maybe if there was a way to pack some more scenes in between that rather than getting to but you know, like you said, the opening monologue pretty much tells you what's going to happen.
Mhm.
Um Obviously we didn't expect it to be as far out there as it was.
It got real strange.
But when it
Um,
changed direction, I was like, okay, I didn't know if I would go in this direction, but I'm still on board. That was kind of my
yeah,
reaction to it. It's like maybe if because the movie is so beautifully shot and the performances
it
are
really
really
is.
good. So
Yeah,
maybe if the third act is one of the better third acts of if the third act was as consistent as the first two, or just the setup, then you maybe have one of the better movies of the year. Instead, it's just a for me it was a very good debut.
yeah. It started like up until that point, it was definitely like in my top 10, and it dropped off pretty significantly after that.
Right, I
Ended
was
up
like,
like at
"Oh
15.
boy, what do we have here? Is this
Yeah.
going to be a game changer?" But yeah, it didn't
Almost.
necessarily pan out when it comes to that. Almost, right. Close but no cigar to greatness. But hey, solid debut. Another couple solid debuts we've talked about.
No, yeah, it's a hitter. He hit 30 home runs before the All Star break. Second half, a bit of a slump, but like overall, looking at the year, still had a pretty good year.
Yeah, pretty good year.
Yeah,
Also game.
didn't break the home run record, but still ended up at like 42.
Well, this next movie is Mike Trout on the Angels. Just a absolute MVP performance in a movie that's not going
What
that far in
movie?
the playoffs. The Survivor. I thought
Oh,
Ben Foster's performance in this one was
yeah,
a case of a performance being. And the movie's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but the performance is so much better. Just the physical transformation, playing a character at 2 points in his life. The character's name being Harry Haft, who was a survivor of the Auschwitz concentration camp and went on to become a professional boxer. And it mostly
that's a
takes place during his time as a boxer and during his time in Auschwitz. To be able to play this character at these 2 points of his life, just physically, it was outstanding and flat out unbelievable at times. I couldn't believe I was watching the same person playing these two different versions of this character.
yeah, like first of all, that's a badass nickname. I'm not fighting someone who has a nickname the survivor of Auschwitz.
Right, that
Like,
is pretty intense because at that point, what can't you survive?
yeah, and like you said, I mean, the performance was just incredible. Like, obviously the shift, the physical changes, but the way he plays the characters at various points of his life, I thought was pretty tremendous. And I really do hope that Ben Foster gets recognition around award season. I think he'll definitely get nominated. But I think at this point, it's Benedict Cumberbatch's award to lose. But
A lot of talk
I
for
can't
Will
say it.
Smith, King Richard.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot all about that. Oh
Yeah,
man, you're I got to see
imagine
that
that,
movie.
dude.
I can't wait for that. But I think a lot of people who watch this movie won't forget this performance anytime soon. And like you said, the movie wasn't bad by any stretch. I think that it was actually pretty good, but it doesn't like live up. It doesn't match his performance. And I think I thought it was interesting, like going through like this period of time, like right after the war, and when they focused on that era of him trying to like obviously there's a lot of weight behind those flashback scenes and the boxing scenes and his dynamic with Billy Magnuson, the Nazi officer at the camp. Like the more like not the more impactful, but I think just as impactful was him holding on to hope of his. I don't even know if he's his wife, girlfriends. Maybe they just met once, which would have been weird. But like person he was interested in, like
Yeah, I think it was like his girlfriend.
okay, like trying to find her and not knowing if he's still alive and holding on to that like for so long and basically controlling his life. And kind of just that, you know, it is a tough thing to kind of to grapple with, and especially watching his actions and the way the story plays out. It's like you still want to have hope and remain optimistic, but not to the point where it drags you down and prevents you from living your own life. And him trying to struggle with that, he really doesn't find peace with his past until very late in his life. And you see how it slowly kind of manipulates him and changes him and makes him become somebody that maybe he never like that's not himself or that he would be proud to be. And
Right.
it really is like seeing him confront his past and being able to finally be free of that, I think was um you know it was an interesting way to kind of supplement the story of being a survivor of the Holocaust. Even going through one of the worst things in the world, you still personally, even though you're free, can still go through things that are very detrimental to yourself. And kind of fighting those two very different but similar mental and physical battles, I think, bounced off each other pretty well. And we get a surprise. I don't know if I want to say this because I don't want to take that away from somebody seeing this movie for the first time who doesn't know. But there's an actor who shows up in this movie, and I was very excited to see him.
Oh, of course I know what you're talking about. And he's awesome.
Yes, quite incredible.
He's just
So
so good at playing that type of role.
he's in the cast, but maybe if you don't look at the
Yeah.
cast, I want that surprise to happen for
Well,
somebody.
not everyone's gonna look at the cast.
Oh, okay.
Another good performance by Vicky Creeps, right?
Yeah,
She's
she
just
actually came out saying, "Oh yeah, I think we talked about that Bergman Island, her not wanting to do any films after PTA." But I think
yeah.
between this, I mean, yeah, she's been in two
Yeah,
films
between
and
this,
stuff.
Bergman Island, and
Yeah.
Old, it's a definitely a good year.
Oh, oh,
She came back swinging. Hey, just from a financial standpoint, get your name out there.
yeah,
Vicky
definitely.
Creeps establishing her legacy, get that back. Yeah, I think it suffers from pacing issues and also the way that the flashbacks were employed. I think that if the movie had a better structure to it, those moments would have definitely hit harder. It's so hard to remember what was happening, like just thinking back on the movie, how things were placed, and at what point in his life, what was he dealing with? Because there were so many different things that happened in Auschwitz that would come back and haunt him. Obviously, the experience of just being there, but similar to Seven Prisoners, the moral choices that he had to make.
Right,
So I think
survival.
if it was better structured, it definitely would have hit more on an emotional level. But you're watching Ben Foster and you're just so mesmerized by this man's transformation. Like I said, at these two different points in time that you can't, it's almost unbelievable that it's the same person. It's just the way that he carries himself. When he's in Auschwitz, you see the fatigue. He's obviously more lanky and he went through that physical transportation, but he shrugs more and there's definitely a weight on him that he's carrying. And when he's the boxer, Harry Haft, he's his posture is more upright and he seems like more of he's more of a physical presence. You could see why he was such a successful boxer. Just for that to be one man, right? I mean, the performance is incredible. The real life story is even more incredible, right? Um, but just because a story is inspiring and like I said, unbelievable and inspirational doesn't mean it's always going to translate to a great movie. A good
Right,
movie,
yeah, it's
not a
good.
great one.
Yeah, great performance.
Yeah, just like I really hope he is nominated. I don't know if the Academy could leave out this performance, but one moment, in one breath, I'm like, the Oscars suck. You can't compare performances. The next moment, I'm like, Ben Foster better be nominated. Uh, it's life inside my brain. All right,
Yeah.
let's move on to the next movie here. We have Silent Night, directed by Camille Griffin. Um, Now I noticed on Letterboxd that this was a movie that you definitely enjoyed more than I did. So I'll let
Yes.
you start here, getting into some of the aspects that work for you in this movie and some that didn't.
Um, I I I can see why maybe you didn't like this movie, but I had a great time with it. It's such a it's a really black comedy. And as the story progresses, it gets a little bit more that kind of comes out more and more. But um, I just found it like pretty enjoyable watching this like group of mostly just like they're not terrible people, but they're this so disconnected from I guess what like the normal people and normal like a normal friend group are. Just the way they interact with each other, I thought was I don't know, it was very entertaining and obviously with this is I don't want to get too much into it, but there's something outside um on the outside that's kind of hovering over this little family friends holiday gathering that I think adds such an interesting kind of wrinkle to the characters and their interactions. And um, I don't know. I thought this movie was pretty hilarious at times. It's definitely one of the ones I left at the most. And a lot of people are gonna. It's interesting the timing of this movie. I didn't view it as a direct commentary on a lot of the current event issues going on. I think it's just a coincidence, but if you do and you connect it that way, then I can see why you might be turned off by this movie. Uh, but I just chose not to. I don't think that was the intention, and I didn't really use that to connect those two dots. So I was able to kind of sit back and enjoy it in a vacuum. You can definitely like. There were times where I'm like, "Ooh, this is not. This is like a weird timing for this film."
Right, there were two movies that I watched. The Falls also had a premise that was, I mean, that was they were talking about the pandemic. in everything
Okay.
but name. But in this movie,
I don't think this was
like
it.
you
I
said,
think it was just like coincidence.
I don't know if it was a coincidence, but I don't think it exploits current events for the sake of making an emotionally impactful movie. I think that the premise is you didn't even need the current events that we have going on to make a movie that deals with something like this. And
Right.
like you
I
said,
think
you
that's
don't
what
want
it
to spoil
was.
it.
Yeah.
I wonder if there were
Oh,
some rewrites just because of, I mean, 2021, a movie coming out in 2021, you have to imagine like it was written recently and made recently. So maybe it was just a happy coincidence that they hint at more so than they planned to than originally.
but like but like the stance the character that we like are rooting for takes would be, I think, contradictory to the stance of the people and just my guess, people making this movie. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Well, that's why I don't think I think it's just a
Well,
coincidence.
it's not exactly the same. But I
Yes,
think that
yeah.
it's interesting to put a group of characters in this situation. It's one of those scenarios that friends and family like to get together and talk about. I won't spoil anything about what's going on. But for me, it just wasn't funny. And I think it
I
was because it's not that it's such a far out situation, but it kind of is. So I wasn't enjoying any of the revelations from the characters or the interactions. You know, so much. It's so important that you feel like they had prior relationships to when you meet them in the film, and I didn't get the sense of that whatsoever. But really, any of these characters. Roman Griffin Davis, he's a fun,
he's
annoying little
great.
kid,
Yeah.
so it was fun to see him running around and being wacky. But it just didn't work for me. Just didn't work for me as a comedy. And I don't, like I said, I don't think they exploit current events. I don't mind that. I think if it gets to a point, it can become annoying, and I think many people will have a problem with that, like you predicted. But for me, that wasn't my problem. I just didn't think it was that funny.
I thought it was pretty funny, especially the kid characters, the way they interacted. Roman Griffin Davis is he's great. How old is
Great
he?
name too.
Oh,
He's got to
that's
be like 10 or something. No, he's 14.
oh wow.
Just looks
But
young.
for
Yeah, this is his
yeah,
second performance. Look at that.
and he's fantastic in it. I mean, compare this with Joe
Yeah, yeah.
Rabbit, like that's quite a beginning to a career. Yeah, just the way the characters interacted with each other, just the kids, and kind of being in this situation, maybe allowing for these characters to be more blunt than maybe they normally would. Or I think as the movie went on and we kind of realized the situation, a lot of the characteristics of how everyone's acting made more sense looking back at it in the beginning when you weren't privy to the big overlying issue going on. So um, I think there's definitely there's like another twist at the end, which I think was like telegraphed
Oh, yeah.
20 miles away, not even a mile
Yeah.
away. So like I just knew that was coming. Um,
Which is also, I don't,
so
is this supposed to be a Christmas miracle? Because it's also,
it is a
I don't want to
Christmas
get
movie.
into spoilers. It is a Christmas movie, but the way that the ending, I don't know, people have to see it, man. Because it's presented as something that's good, but I don't, it's also not good.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
It's like, look at this, awesome. Wait a minute. Once the credits start rolling, shit's gonna get really weird for this kid.
um,
Look, this
you
is the movie I
know,
want to see.
yeah, maybe a sequel.
Yeah.
Uh, in a different way, but kind of like it, it is like they do hit this in a different way, but like I guess just like that family dynamic around the holidays and uh let's say like the humans kind of they're very different tonally and some of the interactions, but it kind of had some of that same like flavor for me, which I enjoyed. I felt the it felt like a group of friends getting together for a holiday for me,
Okay.
and I think the way they bounced off each other and when they go back and tell stories, I just thought it was I was invested, and a lot of the humor landed for me. So I guess if it doesn't land for you, the story might not be enough to really put it over the edge. But for me, it
Yeah,
did.
this is one of those, if it's funny, you're going to, if you think it's funny, you're going to like it.
Yeah,
And if the comedy's
British
not
people crack
really
me up in
working,
general.
those British people, man, there's nothing quite like the British wit.
A British kid saying the F word, that's fucking hilarious. Comedy at its peak. No, Lakewood I was disappointed in. I love Naomi Watts, but That was very much like I think it was very restricted because of COVID. So I think there was something there, but it was a little ridiculous at times. And where is Anne Frank? Talk about like I would watch this movie. I think I talked to you just for like the animation, but the approach to like telling the story, I felt like was just a very big miss. And they try to make some connections. It's kind of all over the place at times, but uh, that is a hard balance, I guess, to make like a kids movie about something like this. But because it comes off just like sometimes just I don't know. If you want to tell this story to kids, I feel like there's some things you need to like not shy away from and not like present it the way it did. But yeah, that was just a miss for me. Very disappointing because I was looking forward to watching this movie, but
Yeah, I
what
heard
are you gonna do?
a lot of the same criticisms from different people about that movie. That the animation is beautiful, and if there was a real emotional story there, then it could have been a classic, maybe an awards contender.
Yeah, but
The couple movies that I watched that didn't really do much for me. I watched Nobody Has to Know with Michelle Fairley on digital. It's about a woman who basically lies to a man who has suffered a stroke and loses his memory. So she basically lies to him and said that they had a relationship before his stroke and becomes his new girlfriend, essentially. Um,
Dear Evan
it's a
Hansen
movie
them?
that, yeah, yeah, kind of in a way. It's another example of a character taking advantage of, some a hardship, not a hardship, but an ailment that befalls somebody else. She was good in it. I was excited to see, Catelyn Stark on the big screen. I haven't seen her in many films. I'm most familiar with her with Game of Thrones, and I thought she was good in it. But it was a movie that it didn't really hit for me emotionally. I respected what it was going for, and at times it was a tender look at a relationship between two older people at similar stages in their lives. It was actually similar to a movie, Ali and Ava, which didn't have the dark undercurrent of Nobody Has to Know. But it's also a movie that deals with two older people who develop a relationship, and it's very wholesome and it's very sweet to watch their relationship blossom because they're two characters that really need each other. They found each other at great points in their lives, or at vulnerable points in their lives, and they help each other make up for the loneliness that they've been feeling. But the chemistry, as good as the chemistry is between the lead two actors, played by who are Adil Akhtar and Claire Rushbrook, they had an incredible chemistry between them. But the story just didn't really work. It was only charming up into an extent. And the couple of other movies, The Falls, I watched, Medusa, two swings and misses. I think Medusa may
Big
have
ones.
been bottom of my list. What'd you say?
Yeah, I think the biggest one we probably miss is Belfast in terms of like award contenders. You know, that's getting a lot of best picture hype, best director hype from a lot of people. That was definitely disappointing that we weren't able to catch that, but
Yeah, it definitely was disappointing because it seems as if it's Kenneth Branagh's best movie in quite some time from
yeah.
a
So
directorial standpoint, and it looks like a movie that's definitely going to be in contention. That's what you said, Belfast, right?
yeah, Belfast.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there were some other ones like I'm trying to think of the other ones that we missed at TIFF. Obviously, we didn't get a chance to see Spencer, and they're saying Kristen Stewart is going to be the favorite to win best actress at the Oscars.
Yeah,
Um, a movie that
that's
I've heard it's very much performance is better than the movie. So I don't know how much of an awards contender that's going to be across the board, but she's definitely going to be in contention.
did the worst person in the world premiere at TIFF. We're going to see that in New York, but I think that's another one that's really highly touted.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe The Rescue was another one that's supposed to be good at TIFF that we didn't manage to see.
There's just so much, man.
Um,
Whew.
right, but
But
going to New York Film Festival, I think I'm going to see five. How many are you going to go see?
only a couple so far. It just depends. It's just what's still available and how many times I'm gonna be able to get out to the city. But I definitely want to try to get to see Macbeth. I also got Comic Con while that's going on. So I mean, it's fucking Denzel
Can't
Washington,
wait.
Francis McDormand by a Cohen brother. So what more can
Playing
you ask
fucking
for?
Macbeth, the most
You're right.
toxic
Yeah.
couple in the history of fiction.
But
All right, well, let's get into our top tens. So I'll start from number 10, going to number 1. Number 10, I have Benediction, a movie that we talked about today. A movie that the more that it's sat with me, the better I've enjoyed it. So that came in at number 10. Number 9 was Marina, directorial debut, a movie that we both really loved and were surprised about. It's definitely one that I'm excited for more people to see. I don't know who's producing it. I don't know if it's coming out on one of these streaming services, but I hope it has an accessible release. Number
yeah,
8, All My Puny Sorrows. Incredible lead performance by Alison Pill. Subject matter that's very relatable, very heavy, and I think it did a good job of tackling its central issues. Number 7, Petite Maman, the follow-up from Celine Sciamma. I think you put it perfectly on your Letterboxd review. It was an absolute delight. It was this
yes,
small little dreamlike fantasy movie. Like I mentioned in our review, a day that I think every child could use. Number 6, The Power of the Dog. People have been hyping this movie up for months now because of Benedict Cumberbatch's lead performance. It's a performance that worked more for me than it did for Aaron, and I think he's going to be in awards contention. And overall, just such a welcome return from director Jane Campion. One of my favorite westerns, one of my favorites of the year, without a doubt. Number 5, Seven Prisoners, a movie that we talked about today. I've already said so much on it, but I didn't expect this movie to have the impact that it had on me. So that's why it finds itself in my top 5 from TIFF and my top 10 in the year. Number 4, I have The Humans. Like I mentioned on my Letterboxd review, one of the best play to film adaptations I've seen over the last few years. An incredible cast of characters. Once again, go into my theory that awards are meaningless because everybody in this movie deserves an award for acting. Number 3, Flea. Hope it's a movie that gets the recognition that it deserves in terms of being nominated for Best Picture. I don't want this movie to be boxed into documentary or even animation, but it should be nominated in both of those categories, but then also for Best Picture as well. Like I mentioned, it's a movie that everyone in the world needs to see. Number 2, Titan. I don't know if this is a movie that everybody in the world needs to see because you're going to put like 10% of the world in the hospital, and hospitals are pretty crowded right about now. But this is a movie that worked for me. For me, this was like medicine. This is a comfort movie because of how
yeah,
fucking insane and stimulating this is. A movie that finds its way in the crevices of your brain and fucking stays there.
yeah.
Um,
I've been scared to go into cars.
you never know what's gonna happen, man.
Yeah,
Shining a light on some very scary scenarios. And number 1, the first movie that I saw at TIFF managed to maintain its number 1 spot, Drive My Car. I absolutely adored this movie. It became one of my all-time favorites. I think it's a classic from the screenplay to the acting to the way that the movie is shot. Everything just came together so well. A near masterpiece from Ryusuke Hamaguchi, and probably still will be my favorite movie of the year. Number 1 movie at TIFF and number 1 for the year. So that is my
yeah.
top 10
We have a pretty
coming off of the
similar.
Toronto International Film Festival.
Yeah, we have a pretty similar list. Placement's a little bit different. I have some things a little bit higher than you did, but number 10, Power of the Dog. Like you said, it didn't fully work for me. The more I sit back and think about it, I tend to like it more. The ending really stuck with me a lot. I definitely want to watch this again, and I think it is a movie that a lot of people are going to enjoy, and I could see why it's going to be on the top of a lot of people's lists come award season. But it's like many on this list. I think this, besides Dune, I'm most interested in watching again. Number 9, Marina, like we said, like you talked about and we talked about before. I think it was just it's very similar in some ways to Power of the Dog and kind of that presence of a controlling patriarch. But I think it did a little bit better in that regard for me. Just setting, just beautiful, wonderfully shot, and pretty gripping story. And like I do hope, I do wonder like how accessible a lot of these films are going to be coming out in the following months. And I hope this is one that a lot of people get a chance to see. Number 8, Last Night in Soho. We were pretty split on this one, but I do agree with you that it did take a bit of a dip, third act wise, but not a big of a dip for it to really affect the movie or kind of um, just diminish the good grace it built for me in the first 2 acts because I found this movie very just hard to take my eyes off of. I was really drawn into this one, and it's another one I just want to watch again in a theater, and I'm looking forward for that to come out. Number 7, Titan. Yeah, like you said, without getting too much into it, it is a fucking bonkers movie. And getting to see it in, even though it wasn't shot in IMAX, but getting to see it in an IMAX theater with that big screen was just quite the experience. Yeah, not a movie for everyone. I would say, like, I wouldn't tell like my grandparents to watch this movie because they would probably like
Die.
either die or hate me or disown me or all of the above. So, um, this is one I might bump up a little thinking back on it because it really is just a fucking. It is an absurd but just really really good movie. I can't wait for people to see this and the reactions that it's going to inspire. But the number 6, The Humans, like you said, fantastic adaptation, great cast, great chemistry. The writing is just so sound and so natural, and it feels just like you're in a fly on the wall of this normal family's Thanksgiving, and the way they kind of play with some of the things tonally and genre wise, I thought was very well done, and I really do hope that this gets a lot of recognition when it comes out from who cares about awards season, just general audiences, because I think this is a film that a lot of people who love film are going to enjoy. Uh, Number 5, Petite Maman, like you said, just a fucking delightful movie. It's crisp. It's barely an hour and 20 minutes, and I think it's even shorter than that. Yeah, hour 15, which is perfect. Yeah, such a great story about just another family relationship and dynamic, and especially like when we watch it to cap off day one after some long, really deep and tense movies, like this was a nice little uplifting story. uh Number 4, Seven Prisoners, like we talk about today, just I really appreciate the more I look back on it, just the amount of depth and characterization they were able to give in a story like this in this short amount of time, and really hitting on a lot of deep issues that are going on today. Number 3, probably our biggest disconnect, which maybe not. I think you have it number 11, but for me it's number 3, and that's Dune.
Yes, it
Ah,
was number 11.
man, Dune. I I can't stop thinking about this movie. I need to see it again as soon as possible. Good news.
I am very excited to see it again.
The box office coming out, like it's doing pretty
Yes.
well for its like staggered release, which I'm not a big fan of the staggered release, especially like so drawn out. I don't know what you think about that, but regardless, like this movie just blew
Yeah,
me
it's
away.
weird.
I can't wait to see it again in IMAX. I can't wait for everyone to experience this movie, and we can really just start talking about it as like a community of like film lovers, because it is a movie that I think is going to be a lot of fun just to talk about with people in the discourse. And I don't think it's going to be like a negative discourse. I think a lot of people are just going to appreciate it, and even people who aren't as high on it as you are still going to find a ton to like about this movie. And yeah, it's. I almost watched David Lynch's Dune last night too when I was scrolling through HBO Max because I just wanted more, but I didn't.
It feels weird having seen it and not being able to go, because normally when I see a movie and I want to go see it again in the theater, I can just go. And now it's like, oh wait, I can't do that.
Exactly. That's what I was saying last time. I wasn't trying to be a dick, being like, yeah, maybe it's not the best thing to see it early because you have to wait a while.
No, yeah, because yeah, yeah, especially when it has that type of impact on you, and like it was your top 3 movies at TIFF, but even for me, who had it at number 11, visually, I mean, no movie on this list can even compete with it. It's one of those films where you could just go watch it and appreciate it for all the technical stuff, even
Yeah, this
if you
like
didn't love the story.
I'm definitely gonna catch it IMAX opening night, and probably even though it's available on HBO Max, I feel like this is a movie where I'm gonna see multiple times in a theater, but I won't watch it on HBO Max.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie.
I might leave it
It's not
on.
obviously
I might put it
right.
on and let it go just to help the streaming numbers because you got to do whatever it takes, right, to get the sequel. But
It's not entirely shot in IMAX, but man, it's as close as it comes to being made for IMAX.
yeah, I think I'm
Because
gonna do
those
IMAX.
shots that fill up the screen, ooh,
Yeah, and I'm gonna do a Dolby also.
right. Yeah, might as well get all the different,
Yeah.
see it in all the different types of ways you can in theaters.
Uh, number two, Drive My Car had a long run as number one for many of the reasons you said before. Um, this one is like, I think you said this. It's like this is a movie I'll buy the Criterion, but I won't watch it for another like 2 years.
Yeah,
um, like this is a movie like you don't have to go back and watch right away. You can it lingers, it's has an impact on you, and it's one you want to let sit, and then when you're ready to go back and watch, you are because it is long and it is like a little deep, but like man, it is very very good. Um, just a excellent film in all aspects, and I do like. I don't know if it's going to get much love for Best Picture overall, but I have a hard time believing it's not going to be up there for foreign language film. And number one, Flea. I think it's my only 5 star out of TIFF. I don't know. I just think it's just a perfect documentary and hits on all fronts. And I do think the animation really boosts this story in a way that I don't think it like it's not a story that needs boosting, but like the visualizations and kind of the way they're able to play out some of the narrative that the that I mean is given is makes it just that much more impactful, and it's really just a excellent way to tell this type of story. And um, I think it really is going to impact everybody who sees this movie, and it's another one too where it's like I kind of wanted to rewatch it again after, but I kind of just let it sit and marinate for me for a little bit, and by the time I was like ready to maybe even try to watch it again, it was off the digital window was over. But I hope the it gets a. It's so tough to say now, but like a theatrical release, or if it's available, if any of these streaming services pick it up, I hope it gets to be able to viewed by as many people as possible.
yeah, I think it's a movie that a lot of people are going to end up putting number one on their list. It's going to be definitely top five in many critics' end of the year lists, and I think it will. I mean, I'm not entirely sure of the history here if a documentary has ever been nominated for Best Picture. I feel like there's a chance that it has. Or maybe it hasn't. Maybe this will break down that door, but it definitely deserves to.
Well,
If a documentary has never been nominated for Best Picture, I'm sure there's been many in the past that deserved it, but this may be like almost the Parasite.
the way it kind of like it's much more than a documentary in a sense because of all the old implements in terms of the animation, and a lot of the story does play out like you're watching a regular film, and you have the narration backdrop, but like it does play out at times as just you're watching a movie with some narration in the background, right? And
Yeah.
I think with all that, the way they tell the story and all the different tools they use to really bring this to life, it's basically I don't know, it has all the aspects of a film, and for that to be separated just because it's a documentary from Best Picture, I don't think is necessarily fair.
Yeah.
So, but we see that all the time where, um, whether it's animation or something like a documentary or even a foreign film, they just kind of stick it like, all right, we'll give it to this category, and that's it. So you hope it's able to kind of transcend the categories and be appreciated for what it for be appreciated the way it should be.
Right, and I don't know where this movie is going to come out, but hopefully there's good word of mouth on it. It's scheduled to be released in theaters on December 3rd. So that's good timing, obviously, for award season. Build up that buzz heading into the Oscars. And I think that the word of mouth could possibly bring it to the forefront of the Best Picture race. I really think so. And hey, man, if it gets that nomination, it's going to have a very good chance of winning. It's similar to Parasite, right? It's like if you get the nomination, that's almost the hardest part for some of these foreign films that deserve to be in contention to win the top award. Just get the nomination, and you're gonna have a really good shot at winning. Because once you're in the door, I think the voters start to realize, okay, there's a reason that a movie like this has been nominated. You know, we have to take a
Right,
closer look at this.
right. It's something where like it's not as common, and it is like um, a bit of an aberration when like either whether it be a documentary or animation or foreign film breaks into that threshold. It's like you have to like exceed like and be so good that you're even able to get it where like as something that may be deserving won't get it there because it just might just be middle of the road when it comes to top 10, right? But you have to be a really stand out to even get into the door of the nomination. And when that does happen and people realize just how good it is, then that's when it starts getting that like buzz to actually win.
Yeah.
Because there are so many more films and that deserve to break that threshold, but it seems that it has to be either top tier to even be able to break through. And but once that happens, like you said, I think the more eyes get on it, and people are like, oh yeah, that there's a reason why it broke through. It's because it's just better than anything
Right.
else.
Yeah. And like we said, hopefully it will build that buzz and definitely be a contender around February. But yeah, that is TIFF video number 3, recapping the movies that we had the privilege to watch. I mean, we talked about it at the end of video number 2, just the overall experience, but it's definitely something that I can't wait to jump back into next year. And I hope I have the chance to attend multiple film festivals. It was such a rewarding experience as a film fan. Um, you know, you mentioned this being able to see the movies and then not being able to jump right back into them. And it's kind of bittersweet, but you can't complain that much. You're getting this early access to movies done by so many incredible artists, new and old, and films that are going to be talked about over the next few months. So it was just an incredible privilege. And I hope you guys enjoyed our reviews and our recaps, you know, just giving our thoughts on the movies that we were able to watch. Um, any last words, Aaron, before we wrap this up?
So remember when I was talking about like movies after, like watching movies after this? I did watch Infinity War, so um,
That
I
premiered
had
at
to.
Venice, I think, at the time.
So like, I
Didn't
definitely
one of
needed.
those? I feel like one of the what was the MCU movie that premiered at a festival? I thought one of them did.
I'm not sure,
Oh no, I
but
think it was Joker appearing at one of the festivals.
but that was like I had to like not cleanse the palate, but like I needed to reset a little
You
bit.
need
So
an
I did.
Infinity War every now and then.
I was able to watch that and keep my attention, but I was just so exhausted. But it was like you said, I think last week, just a good exhaustion, you know. But no, yeah, like it was like I recommend any film fan to try to at least attend one festival because it really is just you're just in a like a little community of all people who just appreciate film and just like I don't know, just the I think I said it earlier, like even though like it was COVID and there were some restrictions and we didn't really get the full experience, even with a limited experience, it was one of like the best times I've had in a while. So definitely looking forward to trying to attend more and experience you know different festivals and all that, and hopefully returning to Toronto next year. So
Yeah, well said. And like I mentioned, thank you guys for listening. Like, share, subscribe, drop in another podcast later this week. It will be a normal podcast. Hopefully Teddy will be on that. And we're also planning to release our Ted Lasso season 1 review right in time for the season finale of season 2. So we're going to drop those pretty close together. We're going to do our season 1 review, and then we're going to record our season 2 review once the finale airs, and then drop that a few days after. So that's exciting. And we've got our Dune review. We'll be
Dune,
dropping probably next Monday. Looks like the release date for that. Um,
I want to get
so
a
that's going to be fun.
dive into Squid Game too. So we got some more. It's funny going back to the old podcast because like I feel like the last few have just been um, not off brand, but like more serious. You know, we're previewing the festivals. Now we're talking and dissecting and reviewing these festival movies. And I think it'll be fun to get back to making fun of Teddy.
Yes, definitely. Maybe we'll have Nash on there too, you know. That's like our Infinity War.
Yeah.
Cleanse the palate for not only us but for our listeners.
We gotta we might have to ease back. Look at the Teddy, Then we'll go Marissa, Teddy, then Nash, kind of ease into the ridiculousness.
Right, and then we'll have in the middle. We'll just throw in the Level Up Gaming crew as well. Just have a whole fucking crossover event. Cash out, baby. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to this podcast, and we will see you later on this week. Peace.
Damn, we were making some good points in that video. Hey guys, Aaron and Nerd Suit Monkey here. Before we end this video, I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. What can I say about you guys that I haven't already said about myself? You are the most important part of the channel and the main reason we keep going strong. Like Beau says, you keep the lights on in the fridge so the fridge is full. Or something like that. So, from everyone here at Nerd Soup, I'd like to thank you guys for your continued support. If you're interested in joining the ranks of our patron supporters, head over to patreon.com/nerdsoup and check out the rewards we offer to our patrons. We recently dropped some new stickers for you guys to check out, or you could choose a tier that will allow you to select a movie, show, or video game for us to review. We've got a full slate of fan-suggested reviews coming your way, and we're really excited about the chance to review some of those movies and shows. We've also got t-shirts, mugs, behind-the-scenes videos showing how we bring our videos to life. And once again, thank you to all our Patreon pledgers who have been supporting us throughout the years. Without you, we wouldn't be able to convert all your pledges into cryptocurrency, so thank you from my future self for making us rich.